Amazon Leo versus SpaceX Starlink. Which satellite internet will save you money? That's a good question. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much once again joining me for Tea Time. Today we're going to be talking about Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and their companies, Blue Origin on one side and SpaceX on the other, and of course the internet satellite companies that they both have. One is Project Kuiper, that is now called Amazon Leo, and of course Starlink. Well guys, I was wrong. I admit it. He mocks me. He mocks me. Guys, well, if you've been with me for a while, I've been doing this for about 56, 57 months, talking about SpaceX, Starlink, and ever since the beta times. And I've always said that this whole Project Kuiper thing with Jeff Bezos, sometimes I'll call him Bozo, is just going to be like a pipe dream. It's never going to happen. Well, something has just recently popped up on the newsfeed, and that is a landing of a first stage of a rocket, just like a Falcon 9, on the back of a drone ship, and it was from Blue Origin.
Standing by for touchdown. Continuing to work, sound system looks good.
This is huge, guys. This is massive. And it gives me a little bit of pause to rethink. And today I want to give you some information, some detailed information about the disparities between the two, now and in the future. So you get a grasp of which way to go, right? Which is going to be better for your wallet. Should you go with Jeff Bezos's Amazon Leo, or should you go with SpaceX Starlink? Or if you're currently with Starlink, what will happen to your bill now that Bezos will probably have a Amazon Leo coming out next year? And this is what I want to get into with you, because I know most of us today are really feeling the grip of the economy, and things are just not good. Price of eggs, price of meat, the price of everything. You go to the store and you get two little bags and you're like, what the hell did I buy? I bought water the other day for like 58 bucks. How is water 58 bucks? Natural. Spring. It's just ludicrousy. Anyway, so that's what we're going to get into today. I hope you enjoy this because I had a good time putting it together. You know, I'm one of those people that do not cut off his nose to spite his face. If I'm wrong about something, I'm going to let you know. And if there is a better way to go, I'm going to go down that road. Even though I'm not a fan of Bezos and his practices, I'm not a fan of Amazon and how they work, because I've been selling with Amazon for over 10, 15 years now. And it's not really a nice place. Let's just put it that way. I'll just leave it at that. Maybe I'll do a video about that one day and I'll tell you exactly why. But for now, this is going to be all about Amazon's Leo and SpaceX Starlink. So like I said, I will not cut off my nose to spite my face. If I'm wrong about something, I'm going to let you know that I'm wrong. And in this case, I might be wrong. I need to be pragmatic about it, right? I need to be able to deal with it sensibly and be able to convey to you unbiased thoughts. That's what you're here for, all right? Not one direction or another direction, weigh both sides. And that's what I'm doing today. And hopefully by the end of this video, you will get a grasp or an understanding, some knowledge. I might even pull out some paper and do some math and show you things that you might not find elsewhere that possibly will help you out. And also, like I said before, help out your wallet. So to start out with, what is this Project Kuiper that is now migrated to a new name called Amazon Leo? It is basically a carbon copy of SpaceX's Starlink, but they're doing it slightly different. And the driving force behind this is supposed to be Blue Origin, which is also Bezos's company. So, like Bezos has Blue Origin, which would be like Musk's SpaceX, well, Bezos has Amazon Leo, which is the equivalent to Starlink. Blue Origin being his rocket company, and I make fun of it all the time, and you guys have been around for a while, you know I do. I make fun of it because Blue Origin has never placed a single Project Kuiper, or now Amazon Leo, satellite on orbit, ever. Even though they do all kinds of different launches, they have never put one of their own satellites up there. They've always used other companies. Now, most of the time they use ULA. And the big thing that just happened the other day was that their booster rocket actually landed on the back of a drone ship. Once again, this is very similar or identical to what Elon Musk does with SpaceX Starlink. He launches the SpaceX Starlink satellites, and then we see the Falcon 9 come back down and land on the back of an autonomous drone ship. This is the exact same thing what Bezos has done with Blue Origin. And what is also really noteworthy is the fairing, or that housing, the cone at the top of the rocket, is pretty damn big. It is 7 meters in diameter. That is a big cone, and it will be able to house about, I think it's 45,000 kilograms of weight. It's a lot. That means there's going to be a lot of satellites they're going to be able to stuff into this thing. Now, as far as reusability, they said, well, we're going to be able to reuse these things up to about 25 times. We know that SpaceX Falcon 9 has been reused, I think some of them about 30 times, but that's about what you're going to get out of them. But that is a lot, because remember, every time you reuse a rocket, it's going to lower the cost of insertion, lower the cost of how much it takes, how much dinero it takes to actually put a single satellite on orbit. The other thing that lowers the cost is the size of that cone. Seeing that that cone is 7 meters around, doing the math on that puts them in a pretty good position. Now, before I do the math and maybe pull out a sheet of paper, I just want to let you know that Project Kuiper, or now Amazon Leo, is set up for, by the FCC, 3,236 satellites. That's what they're authorized for. But there's a caveat here, and there is a cadence to launch. What that means is they need to have on orbit half of that number by July 2026. So what does that come to, Joe? I'm glad you asked. That is 1,618 satellites need to be on orbit by July 2026, or they get fined or they lose their license. Not sure exactly how it's going to go down, but they need to try to get to that 1,618 magic number that they have told them that they have to fulfill. And I've done the math in the past. I've said that this is absolutely impossible. And it really was impossible until what just happened. Once again, the possibility of New Glenn putting their own, when I say their own, putting Amazon Leo satellites on orbit themselves instead of having to subcontractor them out to Arianespace, to ULA, to the Falcon 9 over there with Elon Musk, which they don't want to do. So this is a very big thing. And like I said, I want to do some math for you so you get an idea of what this actually entails and how many are they going to need to put on orbit every single week to be able to hit that magic number of 1,618. Because that's going to make a big difference. The other thing is how many units are they going to have to put on orbit to actually have a viable product? That is a very important question. And once again, I'm going to answer that before the end of this video. Now, a lot of you in the past have asked me, Joe, what is the bottleneck here? Why is it taking so long? Well, number one, before we even get into that, there is currently 153 satellites on orbit. You know, SpaceX Starlink has about 8,800. Project Kuiper, or Amazon Leo, has 100 153 satellites. That is it. Now, back to the length. What is taking so long? Is it the manufacturing of the satellites, or is it the launch cadence that is a problem? Well, the truth of the matter is the manufacturing of these satellites is not the issue. They currently are manufacturing about 5 to 7 satellites per day. That's the peak. And this is happening in, I think it's Kirkland, Washington. Now, once those satellites are produced in Washington, they are shipped across the entire country to Florida, about 3 hours north of me on the Space Coast, the Kennedy Space Center. That's where it is, Cape Canaveral. That's where the launches happen. Now, for me, I don't understand that. They should build a plant here in Florida. Maybe they're working on that. I don't know. But building those satellites in Washington and then shipping them across the entire country just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But either which way, if that's what they want to do, Amazon does have plenty of trucks to be able to do it, right? So it's not that much of a problem. The bottom line here is, once again, they're producing 5 to 7 of these satellites. The problem is the cadence. They do not have the rockets to facilitate the cadence that they need. Now, this goes into the idea of how many satellites are they going to need to be able to give you and I service, at least on the beta test side of things, to try it out. The MVP, the minimum viable product. When are they going to have that? Well, I did some math on it, and I took a look at their math too, and they're coming up with a number of about 578 satellites. So right now, they currently have that 153 on orbit, and they need 578. My math has it around 600, so either which way, let's call it 578 is that magic number when they can have that MVP, minimum viable product, where we can test it out. Exciting. Well, they need about, 400, let's call it 20 more satellites on orbit. It's going to take a little while. Now, how many satellites can this fairing hold? Once again, it is a 7-meter fairing. It is a big fairing. When I do the math on that, we come up with about 78 satellites, somewhere around there. But the story with that is you can't use all of the space. They have to be put together in a certain way. I'm going to guess probably not 78, but maybe 55 to 60 maximum. I'm going to think probably like 52 to 55 is going to be realistic, how many of these satellites they can put in there. This is very important, because not only is reusability important for the bottom line, but placement of these satellites, the maximum amount per launch, is even more important. That means to stuff as many satellites that you can inside this fairing is where we need to be. And we saw SpaceX do this since the very beginning. They started out in the teens, 17, 18, 20 satellites, smaller amount. Now we're seeing 25, 26, 28 satellites. Why? Because they've figured out how to place them in there to take up the least amount of room and be able to inject them into orbit without having any type of problems. And it's the same thing that holds true here. Now, what I thought was really interesting also was the drone ship, that autonomous drone ship that the booster landed on for Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin, the New Glenn, and it was named Jacqueline. I did some research on this. I'm like, Jacqueline, we know that Elon Musk loves using names from sci-fi stuff, maybe a Hitchhiker Guide from the Galaxy or something, right? He loves sci-fi, he loves gaming, that type of thing, futuristic stuff. Well, this one is named Jacqueline. Come to find out, it was a way to honor his mother, because his mother's name is Jacqueline. There's a couple of questions here that people ask me, and it's longevity and it's speed. And this is where we're getting into some numbers that I kind of want to maybe pull out a piece of paper for, because you're going to need to know this, because it's going to determine which way you go. Do you go with Project Kuiper or now Amazon's Leo, or do you go with SpaceX Starlink? So, all right, let's jump right into this top-down camera. We got a nice, clean piece of paper. We got a bunch of pretty pens. So let's get to this. Now, what I want to do here is to give you a comparison or a compare contrast between SpaceX Starlink and the old Project Kuiper, or now we call it Amazon Leo. This is going to help you understand what is the disparity between the two and which one would you be more likely to buy, let's say. So to start out with, you know what? Let's go ahead and put Starlink on this side. And on this side, we will do Amazon Leo. All right. Now, to start out with, a lot of questions I get is, what is the EOL or end of life on these satellites? How long do they last? And the bottom line is Starlink lasts about 4 to 5 years. That's right around the time when the atmospheric drag starts pulling it into the atmosphere and they burn up. Amazon Leo, conversely, will last about 6 to 8 years. I know people are going to be like, well, why is that? Why are these lasting longer? Do they have more fuel? Do they have a better propulsion system? Starlink is using a krypton, let's go ahead and write that, krypton ion thruster, all right? Whereas the Leo system here is using a Hall ion thruster. Does it matter? The answer is no. Is one better than the other? Kind of, not really. They are kind of the same. The Hall thruster that we see here on the Amazon Leo is a little bit a more higher capacity thrust over the krypton ion, whereas the krypton ion is a little bit more, let's say, higher efficiency. So does it really make too much of a difference? Not really. Not really. So now, where is this, once again, this disparity between this 4 to 5 years and this 6 to 8 years? Big difference. Well, number one is the distance from the planet. Now, SpaceX Starlink's satellites are sitting about 320 kilometers from Earth, whereas Amazon Leo's are right around 620 kilometers. Now, this is where the story really starts changing. And what changes here is not necessarily the speed, it is the latency. Now, is there a latency difference of this, let's call it 300 kilometers? Remember, the Amazon Leo is 300 kilometers, let's go ahead and highlight that, 300 kilometers higher on orbit. The one positive effect is there's going to be less atmospheric drag. So over here, we're going to put less drag. And over here, we're going to just simply put more drag. So this is a negative over here on Starlink. It's a positive on the Amazon Leo. Now that there is less drag, it's going to allow them to stay in orbit once again for a longer period of time. And the other positive thing is that it will have a larger footprint per satellite. Larger footprint. Let me put that down here, larger footprint. Over here, we're going to put smaller footprint. Why is that? Well, it has to do with the satellites and the distance from the planet. So if we draw the planet right here, and we put a satellite right here, and we put another satellite right here, if they're both pushing out the exact same signal, this one above here would hit an area this big, whereas the one closer would hit an area at the exact same angle, only this big. And it's just simply math. The further away the satellite is, the greater the coverage area. And, once again, the other positive, the less drag being further away. But, like I said before, there's always a negative to that. Being that it's further away means that there's going to be greater latency. Well, how much latency? Being 300 kilometers further away gives them approximately 2 milliseconds more latency. So if this is at 0 plus latency on the milliseconds, this would be +2. Meaning that if you were to send a signal to a satellite and receive that signal back. Basically, you do a send and a receive and then an acknowledge packet. That has to go ping pong, basically going back and forth from the Earth to the satellite, from the satellite back to Earth. If that number is, let's say, 5 milliseconds for that round trip, it would take Project Kuiper or Amazon's Leo 7 milliseconds. We'll make that a negative, right? This is definitely a negative. And this holds true with anything when it comes to satellites and the distance. That's why when we see satellites that are on GEO at like 36,000 kilometers in comparison to something that's at 600 kilometers, there is a massive disparity in latency. Latency that, let's say, would be 7 milliseconds here with the Amazon Leo, a satellite that's sitting in GEO will be around, let's call it 700 milliseconds. It is a mass disparity. That's why companies like HughesNet and Viasat are going out of business, because they're just simply too far from the planet. Now, this does not affect speed. So when SpaceX Starlink is able to provide 1 gig a bit of data throughput next year, Project Kuiper will also provide 1 gigabit. It won't make a difference. The biggest difference, once again, is here when it comes to latency. Latency, though, is a big thing. So even though it's only a small, let's say 2 milliseconds, every millisecond counts. Now, there's one other thing that kind of sets the two apart. The ISL, or intersatellite lasers, that basically communicate from, let's say there is a Starlink here and here and here and here and here, or an Amazon Leo in all of these spots. The laser link, or that ISL, communicates through lasers from satellite to satellite to satellite to satellite to satellite. And it does it at the speed of light. Well, there is a major disparity between the two when it comes to the amount or the capacity of the data that's flowing through. Now, SpaceX Starlink is sitting right around, let's say, 10 gigabits per second, whereas the Amazon Leo is right around 100 gigabits per second. Now that is a 10-fold difference in the amount of data that this ISL system can actually send. Now the difference, though, is the distance that they can actually send the data. SpaceX Starlink can send it about 4,000 kilometers, whereas the Amazon Leo can only send roughly around 2,500 kilometers. So why would it matter? Well, if you are trying to shoot for a very dense population in a region and you want to route in that dense population, well, this is the way to go, because you're going to be able to send more data, right? You're going to be able to send a greater amount of data through your lasers. Conversely, if you want to now get this data across the entire planet, sending it over 4,000 kilometers, this is actually a better route to go. So it just depends on what they're trying to do and how they're building out their network. So the way I look at this is, obviously you can see that there's positives and negatives on both sides, right? And you kind of weigh them to see what is better. You have a longevity issue where SpaceX Starlink satellites are going to stay on orbit for let's say a lesser period of time because of atmospheric drag is pulling them back into the atmosphere where they're going to disintegrate. You see the Project Kuiper or the Amazon Leo now staying up there for a longer period of time, about twice as long, a little bit less than twice. And that is why? Because of the distance from the planet. Instead of 330 kilometers or 320 kilometers, you're at like 620 kilometers or so. So you're looking at 300 kilometers further away. Once again, there is a difference also in the footprint. Footprint means a lot, because being able to get that footprint, let's say you have both satellites sending out the footprint at this angle, like I showed you in the illustration, well, this angle becomes this angle much wider when it's further up in space. So you're able to hit more people with less satellites. That's why they're saying they only need about 3,200 satellites in comparison to SpaceX. They want a lot more. They're shooting for about 43,000 satellites. And chances are they're probably going to continuously take these satellites lower and lower and lower to a point where these satellites are only staying on orbit for a few years and they're constantly being refreshed. I know there's a lot of people saying, well, why would you want those satellites to be so disposable, like toilet paper or something? And they look at it as a bad thing. Well, if you're in the tech industry for any period of time, you know tech is just burning and churning at such a just breakneck speed. So a satellite that's on orbit for 6 or 8 years is so outdated at that point. It's like having a calculator to a computer. It's just not there. A flip phone compared to our smartphones, because the technology is exponentiating at such a rate that you don't really want those satellites up there that long. You want them to come back into the atmosphere and burn up so you could constantly refresh them. So it's not really a bad thing. We see that being true when we look at SpaceX Starlink and their version 1 satellites in comparison to the version 1.5s and the version 2.0 minis. The version 1s do not have ISL built into them. No inter-satellite links. No lasers, not pew-pew lasers. No communication lasers built onto them. Now, that is a major problem, because they are now not really part of the mesh network. They are not connected. Are they still being used today? Yes, but they're not connected. Whereas the 1.5s and the 2.0 minis, they are all connected, making this wonderful mesh network. Whereas anything that's on this satellite can literally be on a satellite on the other side of the planet within milliseconds, through bouncing the lasers from satellite to satellite to satellite to satellite. You following me? Whereas the version 1s are outdated. Time is the enemy of technology. So having something that you turn and burn as fast as SpaceX Starlink is actually for them a good thing, because they have the reusability. They have a booster that has literally put SpaceX Starlink satellites on orbit like 30 times. So every time that booster does its thing, it costs less and less and less and less per satellite to inject them in orbit. You follow that? So it is really, really important. And I think that is one of the things that is happening now with Bezos. Now that he finally has a booster that has landed on the back of a drone ship, an autonomous drone ship that is now ferrying itself back to the Space Coast so it can be refurbished and then launched again, that is massive, massive for them. That is a really, really big deal. And that's why I kind of changed my tune when it comes to Project Kuiper, or now Amazon Leo. I do now believe that it will come to fruition. But, and this is the big but, when will it happen, and will you save money? That is what everyone wants to know. So, based on that 578 number that I told you a little while ago, on how many satellites need to be on orbit for them to have a viable product, okay, minimal viable product, the MVP, available to us to test out, I don't think it's going to happen until probably first or second quarter of 2026. It's not going to happen in 2025 like they predicted it was going to. It's just simply not going to happen. It just can't. Now, why do I say that? The reason I say that is the numbers and how many satellites can they put on orbit per month. I really don't think that they're going to be able to up the cadence as of yet. Yes, they landed a rocket on the back of a drone ship. That's fantastic. But they still have yet to launch a single, now Amazon Leo satellite into orbit. Blue Origin has not. They did just send out satellites that are going to Mars now, that are going to arrive like around 2027, 2028 or so. Well, they can get to Mars, but they can't get one of their satellites into space. That's a problem. And that is a problem that they need to fix. Not only do they need to fix it now, but they also have to increase cadence. And now, like I said at the beginning, the problem is not with the manufacturing of the satellites. The problem is, once again, the cadence, being able to get them up there. Moving forward, they need to be able to get 420 more satellites on orbit, according to what Bezos is saying, so that they can go live. The bigger question is will the FCC fine them or pull their license for this project for Amazon Leo if they do not meet that 1,618 satellites by July of 2026? And the answer to that is, I don't know. I really don't know. They could. Chances are they probably won't. They'll probably extend them. They'll probably give them a couple of extra months or 3 months or something to be able to do it. But can they do it? They have like 200, I think it was 254 days the last time I looked, 254 days before deadline to be able to get another 1,400 plus satellites on orbit. And they're not going to be able to do it with ULA. They could possibly do it with the Falcon 9s, but he's not going to ask Elon, now that he's got a New Glenn, to actually land on the back of a ship. He's not going to do it. What this means is they're going to have to go forward with a breakneck launch schedule to be able to meet that deadline. Can they do it? What say you? Down below, I would like to know. Let me know. Do you think they'll be able to get 1,618 satellites on orbit by July of 2026? What this means is if we took a number of 60, which is actually more, it's probably going to be like 52 to 55. But if we took a number of 60 that will fit in that fairing at the top of the New Glenn rocket, that means that they would have to launch 27 launches between now and then. 27 launches. And that means 0.75 launches per week. So it's almost, let's say, one launch per week. They're barely doing one launch per month, not almost one launch per week. Now, that's if New Glenn was to amazingly just start launching every single week. That's not going to happen. So what that means is we're going to have to take the numbers back to the 27, 25 satellites that they can launch with like ULA or something. In that case, they have to launch 60 times. That comes to 6 or 7 launches per month. Like I said, they're only doing one. Do you see where the math just doesn't work out for them? That's why I've been saying this for quite some time, that just their pie in the sky dream that they're going to go live in 2025. And many videos ago, like, God, months and months back, I said it's just not mathematically possible. And still, even today, now that we see that they have advanced as they have, I just don't think it's going to happen in the timeline that they've said. So, my prediction is this. Where I said that Project Kuiper, or now Amazon Leo, is a pipe dream of Jeff Bezos, I no longer believe that to be the case. I do believe it's going to come to fruition. Now, is this something that you are going to be able to save money using? The answer to that, in my personal opinion, is yes. We're going to save money regardless. Why is that? Competition, guys. Competition. I've said this for many, many years. Competition breeds innovation. No competition or monopolies breed iteration. Perfect example is like Adobe. If you use Adobe Suite in the past, Adobe now is a leased product. It's a rental product. You can't buy it, all right? You have to lease it. Whereas in the past, you were able to buy it. Adobe was forced to, let's say, sell you on the idea of upgrading. So they had to put really innovative stuff in the new suite so that you would purchase it. Well, as of now, where it's a rental model that you pay in perpetuity, you never own anything, they don't need to do that anymore. They don't have to make you purchase the new upgrade, right? So there's no innovation. That's all it is small iteration. That's it. The same thing holds true with everything. Monopolies basically breed iteration, whereas when you have a lot of competition, it breeds innovation. So we're not only going to get better pricing from this happening, but we're also going to get a better product, possibly a faster product. Everything will simply be better. My question to you is, would you be more akin to using a Project Kuiper or an Amazon Leo, or would you more like a Elon Musk product with the SpaceX Starlink? I know there's a lot of people out there that can't stand Elon Musk, so they would love to have an alternative, right? Those are the same people that buy Elon's battery-operated car, Tesla, and said, you know, we absolutely hate him, but we're just using it because we like the battery-operated car. Whereas before they used to love the guy. So, it is kind of the way it is. The way I look at this, and I want to know also in the comments, what do you think about this? The way I look at SpaceX Starlink as being a means to an end for Elon Musk to be able to fund his Mars missions and everything else that's happening. Because we know SpaceX Starlink is a cash cow. It's a cash machine. It is an ATM, period. The way I see this Amazon Leo for Jeff Bezos is a little bit different, all right? He's not looking for money. He's looking for a means to an end to get to you. What does that mean? He has Amazon, right? The way I view this Amazon Leo is a Kindle. It's not about the hardware. It's about your mind. It's about your attention. Just think about the amount of data that Amazon Leo would get from you from knowing every single bit of traffic that goes through your internet. Could you imagine? Everywhere you go, everything you see, everything you buy, everything. Can you imagine how easy it would be for Jeff Bezos' Amazon to sell you stuff if it's also listening to what you're doing all day long on the internet? Massive. So that's, once again, I believe that the Amazon Leo is a Kindle. It's a means to an end. It's not necessarily about the internet as a whole. It's about the hearts and minds of the people. It's the ability to bring people into their ecosystem. The same thing that Apple does, brings people into the ecosystem so they don't leave. That is the idea, all right? That is the way I look at it. And that's why I do believe that not only will SpaceX Starlink hardware eventually be free and the price will go down, I believe that the Amazon Leo hardware will also be free, or it'll be a stipend, a very small pittance of amount. It's going to be a Kindle. Once again, a means of advertising. How about if we do this? We give you an Amazon Leo and we'll do it for free, and your price per month will be very low, but we'll insert or inject ads all the time. We see that happen all the damn time, right? I have a service that I've had for 10 plus years called Prime. Well, when I first got Prime, Prime was Prime. You got stuff overnight. You didn't have to watch ads. Guess what? That's all gone. The overnight thing is pretty much gone. You can get some things overnight, but the majority of it still takes 2-3 days. And then they will also say, for $2.99, we will get it to you overnight. I've been paying for it. That's why I have Prime. No. It's an extra $2.99 if you really want it overnight. The same thing holds true with movies. Prime movies were Prime movies. You would watch them for free, and that now, no. You get the Prime movie, but you have to watch ads. Minutes and minutes and minutes and minutes of ads while you're watching it. Why do I have to pay for this service if I'm not really getting the service anymore? This is what they do. They change their TOS. They change their terms of service so that we're basically screwed in the end. So anyways, what say you? What do you think? I think that this is a really good thing. And once again, I was wrong when I was saying this was a pipe dream that will never come to fruition. And I do believe that it will now. How will it affect SpaceX Starlink over the next 6 to 12 months? I think will be minimal. Over the next, let's say 12 to 24, a little bit, and maybe 24 to 36, possibly. And it really depends on the rollout. That's my personal opinion. What say you down below? And if you enjoy this content, please throw it a thumbs up, share it with your community, hype it. Whatever you can do, I would really appreciate that. That helps out a ton. If you want more SpaceX Starlink content, I'll put a link here. You can click on that. There's over 600 videos I've put together. Helpful how-tos, tips, tricks, what to do, what not to do, what to buy, what not to buy, and of course the why behind all of it, because this channel is always about the why. And hopefully how at the same time. So if you want to say thank you for all of my hard work on this channel, there's a little thanks button down there. Click on that, give $1 or $2 if you want. If not, it's perfectly fine. The video is still free. Consider becoming a member of the channel. That would be even better. And if you haven't went over to my shop yet, go to JCristina.com/shop. Once again, JCristina.com/shop. Check out my merch if there's something there you like. Help support me and my family. Many blessings to you and your family. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay connected, hopefully through SpaceX Starlink, or now, maybe Amazon Leo. And we'll see you in the next one. Love you guys.